Hey everybody, it's Tim from Tadabase, and this is inventory management. We're going to cover all the basics on how to build an inventory management application using Tadabase. We're going to start from step one, where we talk about kind of the foundations of this application, how we're going to build it, why we're going to build it in this particular way. And it's going to allow us to scale the application nicely and implement more complex features later on, like warehouse management, more in-depth product management, and things of that nature. So this is part one of a few different videos that will cover everything you need to know about inventory management. The application that we're going to build today is going to cover 5 basic data tables. These are going to serve as the structure for our application in all future updates that are made to this application. Those 5 data tables are going to be our products, our suppliers, our customers, our inbound inventory, and our outbound inventory. We'll cover those in more detail here in a moment, but first let's check out what the finished application is going to look like, and then we'll dive into some of the theory and, of course, the actual app build. We're going to sign in as an administrator for our organization. And once we're inside the application, we can start to explore the different things that I mentioned earlier: the suppliers, the products, the customers, and our inventory records themselves. The first page we're going to look at here is the products. So we can manage all of our products by adding new products. We can view details of the product, and we can also edit the product. You'll notice on this main products page here, we have an overview, a general overview of the total products we have on hand, whether or not we need to reorder it, and just some helpful information about whether or not our expected stock matches the actual real stock that we have on hand. Of course, with the products that we are ordering, they are going to come from various suppliers. On the suppliers page, we're going to be able to add new suppliers and view details of those suppliers in the same way that we could with the products. Our customers page is going to work in the same way, where we can add new and view details about those customers. And then we have our pages to manage our actual inventory. The products coming in is managed through the inbound inventory page, where we can add new products that we have ordered by selecting a product, a supplier, how many we ordered. We then can apply simple actions such as this button that says mark as delivered, which will automatically update the order status to delivered so that we know that the products that we ordered have actually been received by our team. The outbound inventory page is going to let us control all of the products that are flowing out from our facilities or from our organization. The add new button at the top will allow us to do just that by selecting a product, a customer, supply the outbound quantity that has left our facility in order to record that information and help with the calculations that happen behind the scenes. Overall, it's a pretty simple application to get started with. There is some logic that's happening, like I mentioned, behind the scenes through equations and calculations in order to keep track of our current inventory at the product level, such as how many products we currently have on hand. But other than that, it's not too bad. So before we actually get started into the actual build, there's just a few things I want to talk about on how we're actually going to structure this as far as the data goes, so that we have a better understanding of not only how to build it, but how it works. Right. So as I mentioned, we have 5 data tables that we need to create because there are 5 different kind of entities that we need to keep track of. We need to keep track of our products. So this is going to include information such as the product name, product images, any other helpful information about that specific product that we need to keep track of. Now, of course, when we are ordering these products and we are taking them into our facility or our organization, we'd like to know which supplier we purchased them from. So we're going to keep track of our suppliers, such as their supplier name, phone, contact information, address, things like that, inside of a supplier data table. And of course, when products leave in this particular application, we're going to be dealing with customers. And similarly to the suppliers, we are just going to keep track of the customer name, email, phone, address, and any other helpful information for a customer. Now, the real guts of this application is going to take place inside the inbound inventory data table and the outbound inventory data table. These 2 data tables are going to power all of the calculations that happen at the product level, where we are determining how many products came in, how many products came out, and then we can subtract the 2 in order to get our total products on hand. By splitting the actual inventory records into 2 different data tables, we can keep track of specific things that make sense for whether or not the product came in or whether or not the product went out. Additionally, this is going to help us as we expand the application and eventually add in some warehouse management because we will then be able to know exactly where that product was pulled from in a physical sense or a physical location. So which warehouse, which bin or shelf or whatever it is inside the warehouse where you're storing your products. It's going to help us be a lot more specific, a lot more granular, and it's going to give us more flexibility in the end. Now, of course, when we're building applications with Tadabase, the real kind of power of Tadabase itself comes from the ability to add connections and relationships between these data tables. So, unlike working with spreadsheets where all the spreadsheets are kind of individual and standalone and they don't speak to each other, when we're creating data tables, we can add connection fields between them in order to communicate information between the objects that we're actually storing data for. Now, in this very simple graph, simple model, I'm simply trying to just show you where the connection fields live and what they connect to. So the dotted lines here, with the exception of this big fat purple one, they all indicate connection fields. So our inbound inventory records are going to connect to suppliers and connect to a product, right? So when we take in a product, we need to know what product it was and who did it come from. When a product goes out, notated as an outbound inventory record, again, we need to know what is the product, who did we get it from, where is it going to, and then more specifically, which inbound inventory record did we actually pull that value from or that data from. So which bin or which shelf or which warehouse, all of these things can be tracked inside the outbound inventory data table so we can gain deeper insights and more reliable data in how our product is actually moving both in and out of our organization. Furthermore, the kind of overall flow of how these inventory records are going to work between the inbound and outbound tables is like this. So when we create an inbound inventory record, which again, all that really means is that we have received something. So our location, our store, our warehouse, our distribution center, whatever it is, we have received something. We have ordered a product from a supplier. Here's the SKU, the quantity we ordered, and the order status. Okay, and that represents the inbound inventory record. When that particular order was received by our team or by our organization, then it's then being counted as physical inventory that we have on hand. When we are creating outbound inventory records, again, we need to reference that inbound inventory record. If we create a record here where a product exists from a supplier and it's in bin A12, then when we are creating our outbound inventory record, we are notating the quantity that has moved out of our facility, and we need to know exactly from which inbound inventory record we have pulled that data from. Additionally, because we have connected it to an inbound inventory record, we can then go and grab the connected product and the connected supplier so that we know that information for the outbound record. And then, of course, we can attach it to a customer to complete the record that we're creating. All right, now I know looking at these graphs, it's very conceptual, and it might be a little difficult to actually look at this and try to picture how this is all going to work. But based on what I just showed you with the published application and that little demo I just gave, it's really not that complicated when you're actually using the application. All right, so let's hop over to our Tadabase builder now, and we're going to start to build all this out and set up all of our data structure and the pages that we're going to use to view and manage all of the data behind the scenes. For this, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to create a brand new application, and we can call this something like inventory management. After our app has been created, we're just going to go through a couple housekeeping items in order to set this up to build. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete our sample data table because we don't need that in this particular case. We can then go to the page builder, and we're going to delete our sample page that was created as well. And last thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our settings. Under general settings, we are going to change our time zone because we are going to rely on some date and time fields here so that we know when orders were created, when things were delivered, things like that. We're going to rely on date time fields, so we want to make sure that we're in the correct time zone. Now, as far as the actual Tadabase builder goes, I'm not going to go into too much depth about all the specifics within each section of the builder. Just so you know, we're only really going to be working today inside the data builder and the page builder. We are not going to get into some of the other more advanced features today. We're simply going to keep it inside the data and the page builder. Before I even start to create my data tables, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my default users table, and I'm going to create a user or all users who I intend to have log into this application. So if you are the only person who's managing your inventory, then you should just create a user record for yourself. If you have an entire team of people who manage your inventory, who need to see and have access to this data, then you should create multiple users, one for each person. So I'm going to add a new record here, and we'll just call this admin. And this is going to be just a fake account that I'm going to use in order to access the application. I'll give it just a default role for now. If you'd like to make different user roles to allow privileged permissions per user role, then you can simply add new user roles inside the roles tab of the users table. Now that I have my user created, I'm going to start adding data tables. So we'll click the Add Data Table button here, and we'll start to define all of those things that we talked about a few minutes ago, like products, suppliers, customers, inbound inventory, and outbound inventory. This has now created the 5 data tables that we're going to use throughout the actual application, and this defines the data structure that the application relies on. Now that we actually have the data tables created, we can go through and start creating fields to store individual data points per record that's created. And we're going to keep this really simple and basic in regard to the fields that we're going to use per data table. Of course, everybody's use case and situation is going to be a little bit different, but I think these at minimum are the required fields that you should have. Anything additional, you're welcome to create on your own. For our products table, we're going to navigate to the fields tab, and we're going to just create 2 additional fields here. We already have a default product name. It's a text field that works perfectly for what we need to do. I do want to keep an image of the actual product or multiple images. So we'll create an attachments field, and we'll call this product image. And we'll change the download, the link format to format as an image. The next thing I'm going to do is add a number field because I want to know the minimum quantity for reordering. All right. So when a value, when the number of products gets to a minimum value, I want to know that it's now time to reorder that particular product. Now there's going to be some additional fields here that we're going to create, but they're all going to be calculated fields. They are all going to be equation fields that we are going to set up, formula fields, so that we can calculate values based on connected tables. But we're not quite there yet. We don't have any connections coming to this data table. So for now, we are just going to move on to suppliers. For suppliers, again, this is going to be very basic. We're going to have a name of the supplier. We could then have a person name that can serve as our supplier contact so that we know who we can contact at that particular supplier. We can then have a supplier email, a supplier phone number, and a supplier address. And I think these are the base level minimum fields required when we're storing information about our suppliers. The same is true for our customers. We need a customer name. Would likely want a customer email, a customer address, and a customer phone number. Now at this point, we can move on to the inbound and the outbound inventory data tables. And this is going to be where things kind of start to take shape. So we're going to start to add connection fields in our application now so that we can allow our data tables to share information and speak to each other. So within our inbound inventory data table, we are going to, first, we're going to delete this text field called inbound inventory name. We don't need that field. We're going to get rid of it. We do need to start by adding connections. Now, switching back to this graphic here for a moment, we know that when we create inbound inventory records, we need to know what product is attached to that record, what supplier is attached to that record, and then three additional fields here we're going to add, such as a SKU or some sort of ID. It could be either or. Quantity ordered and the order status. To create a connection field, I'm simply going to hover over here the Add New button on the right-hand side under this Connections menu. I can select the product data table because, again, I need to know what product I'm keeping track of here. And for our display field, we want to make sure that we are displaying the product name. We'll do the same thing for supplier, where we'll select our supplier data table. We will make sure that it's a one-to-one connection, so we can leave this selected by default. Again, our display value or display field displaying the supplier name is very informative in that case, so I'm just going to leave it as supplier name and click save to create that connection field too. Next, we need to know the quantity that we ordered. So we'll choose a number field and call that quantity ordered. Next, we'll choose an option field. In this case, likely a radio select field will work just fine. And we'll call this order status. And then we can define the actual values that we can select within this option field. So I don't need an icon for this. I can do a color badge, that's fine. And we'll call the first option ordered. For the second option, no icon, we'll make it green, and we will call this delivered. So this is going to let our team know, right, that, hey, we've ordered products from supplier A, and right now they are currently just ordered. We're waiting for them to arrive to our facility. When they are delivered and they're actually physically in our facility, that is when they are actually counted against our total inventory. So we'll save that field, and then we can move on to the SKU field or the product ID field. I'm going to use a text formula for this, and I am going to call it SKU, although I realize it might not be a traditional SKU that you might be familiar with. But what I want to do is I want to pull in some connected information. So when I have an inbound inventory record, we are going to have a connected product and a connected supplier. I want to take those two connected values, the product name and the supplier name, and I want to merge them together. So I'm going to take, like I said, that text formula field, and then I'm going to choose in this drop down, we're going to choose the connected product name. I'm going to add a separator here. And then I'm going to choose the connected supplier name. And again, I'm just going to call this SKU for now to identify the field. Now, last but not least is our outbound inventory table. All right, so I'll tell you about the fields I'm going to create, but as we kind of build them and finish building the entire application, hopefully you have a good understanding of why we built it in this way. Again, so if we reference our graphic one more time, when we are creating an outbound inventory record, we're actually going to have 4 connection fields on this particular record. An inbound inventory connection, a product connection, a supplier connection, and a customer connection. Now you'll see this as we start building out the pages, but when I add one of these records, all I'm actually going to select is an inbound inventory record and a customer. These two items, the product and the supplier, are actually going to come from a connected value of our inbound inventory records, product and supplier. So while we are still making a direct connection from outbound inventory records to the product data table and the supplier table, we are pulling the values from the inbound inventory record itself. So we'll create those fields and then we'll talk about it a little bit more just to kind of hammer home why we are doing it in that way. So the first connection we're going to create is the inbound inventory. For our display field, we can choose something like the product or the SKU. That's up to you. I'm going to choose the product. And for the name of the field, I think I can still probably just call it the inbound inventory record, just to be as descriptive as possible. The next connection is going to be to the products table, and we can leave this basically as is, or it's a one-to-one connection. Display field is product name, and the name of the field is product. That's fine with me. And then we will do supplier. That looks good. And customer. That looks good. And then lastly, we will add a number field for the outbound quantity. There we go. Outbound quantity. So how many of these products have actually left, or how many are we deducting from our total inventory count? All right, so to kind of show you how this works and why it works this way, I added a couple little just sample demo records into product suppliers and customers. So if we add a record into the inbound inventory table, again, we're doing this through the data builder. In reality, you're going to be doing this through the pages that we create in the page builder, but just for demonstration purposes here, we're going to add it here in the data builder. So when I receive a product or I order a product, I'm going to order product A from a particular supplier. I'm going to order 10 units and we'll have the status be flagged as ordered. Okay, now as we move through this application, these products show up at our facility and this field is going to get updated to delivered. Now that this record exists as a physical thing in our facility, we can then count it towards our product. So when we go back and we add our calculated fields here, it will show 10 because we have 10 items that we ordered and they are now delivered. Now we're going to do that again. Now let's say when we tried to order these products, supplier A only had 10, but in reality we needed 20. So we ordered 10 from supplier A and 10 from supplier B. When we look at our inventory, our inbound inventory table right now, you can see that we have two identical products, product A. We have two records for product A, but one is ordered from supplier A and one is ordered from supplier B. But if we add up these two totals, we know that we have 20. When we create our outbound inventory records, if we were only to select a product and how many went out, then we wouldn't have any idea whether we deducted that value from this record or this record. So by creating that connection to the inbound inventory record, and that's really going to serve as our primary connection between our outbound table to our inbound table and all the others. By selecting an inbound inventory record instead, we can then determine which physical stock we actually pulled from. Okay, so right now, this is not displaying a whole lot of helpful information, but I promise it will when we get into the page side of things. So now when we select this inventory record, we're pulling specifically from one of these. So we're deducting a value from this one. So maybe this will get changed, to 5 or something, like it's the total count is calculated behind the scenes. So that's kind of the logic behind it all. And like I said, you'll see that a little bit more once we get into the page side of things. So I'll go through and I'll delete all my sample stuff and we'll go through and we'll add in our final calculation fields in our products table, and then we will move on to the pages. So for those calculated fields, we need to know a bunch of information, and all of it is going to be calculated using complex formulas, which means that we are calculating based on connected values. We will also do basic or number formulas where we're just doing some simple math within the table itself, and then some equations which allow us to output some text based on different values. So the first thing we want to know is a sum of all of the total number of products that were ordered for this particular product. So we'll do total ordered, and we want to look into the inbound inventory table. And we want to sum the value of the quantity ordered. So every time we place an order, we want to know how many did we order and then sum it all together and store that value on the product level. The next thing we want to know is of those total orders in the inbound inventory table were actually received. So we'll call this total received, and it's going to look almost identical to the last field we created, except we're going to add a data condition. So we only want to count when, we'll call this delivered. We only want to count and sum these connected values when the order status is delivered. So this order status lives in the inbound table. We can reference it here inside of our calculation, inside of our complex formula, so that we are filtering the values that we are summing instead of just doing all of them. Now, for the opposite of that, we want to know how many we're currently waiting on. We'll call this field waiting on, and we'll go into our inbound inventory table. We're going to do the sum function, and we're going to sum the quantity ordered. This time it's going to be ordered status. It's going to be when the order status is ordered. So the opposite of what we just did. Now, moving on to the outbound table, we want to do the same thing, but we want to do the total outbound, and this is going to be the outbound inventory table that we want to look into, and we're going to sum the outbound quantity. So far, this is going to give us the totals between the inbound and the outbound inventory table. Once we have those, we can now perform a calculation between those values in order to find out how many we actually have on hand. For this, we'll choose a number formula or a basic formula, and we'll call this total on hand. And then we're going to choose the add field drop down here, and we are going to take our total received. We're going to subtract it from the total outbound. So basically how many came in and then how many went out. We're going to find the difference, and that's how many we physically have inside of our facility. Now there's another value that's similar to that, which is an expected total on hand. So we've ordered 20 products. 10 of them have been delivered and 5 of them have actually gone out. We're still expecting another 10 to actually come in and be marked as delivered. So we want to know what's our expected total. How many should we have once all the orders are completed and received versus the actual total on hand, which is how many do we physically have based on the number that we've actually physically received. So for this one, we will do another number formula. We will call this expected total on hand. And this equation is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be waiting on plus, and then we'll add some parentheses here. And then we'll do our total received minus our total outbound and close our parentheses. Next, we're going to create 2 equation fields because we want to output some text based on some of these values that we have stored within our other calculations. The first one is going to be this is supposed to be reorder indicator. Here is the formula that we're going to use. It's an if statement or an if formula. Basically, we're looking at 2 different fields indicated here by the curly brackets. If the field total on hand is less than the minimum quantity for reorder, then output yes, otherwise no. We can validate that equation to make sure that it's good. The output type will be text, and we can save that. The last field that we're going to create here is going to be our stock match status. This one is also an if statement, except we're looking at 2 fields and making sure that they equal each other. So total on hand, right? How many do we physically have based on what we physically received versus what's our expected total on hand, which is how many have we received and how many do we currently have physically and how many are we still waiting on. So what's our expected total to have? If those 2 things are equal to each other, then we're not waiting on any orders. We've received all of our product and our total on hand matches what we expect it to be. So if that's the case, then we're going to output the text stock match. And if it's not the case, then we'll output stock mismatch. We'll validate that field and save this. Now our data structure is complete and we're ready to move on to the page builder. The page builder is going to allow us to create pages or web pages where our users, such as myself or anyone else on our team, can log into the application in order to view and manage all of this data that we are going to be inputting into the system. We'll click on the page builder and then we will talk about some of the things we're looking at. And we're going to create pages kind of in the same way that we did with our data tables, where we're just going to kind of create a bunch of pages and we're going to go through and we're going to sort them out one by one afterwards. So again, we're inside the page builder, and you can see we have three default pages that are available to us. We have the login page, which does exactly that, allows the users that we created in our users data table at the beginning of this video to log in to the application. We have our sign up page. So if you want to allow for registrations, where people can actually go and register for the application themselves, instead of you creating user records for them, they can do so on the sign up page. Then we also have the profile page, which allows registered users to modify their own user record. We are going to leave these pages untouched for the moment, and instead we are going to move into our default layout, and we are going to begin adding pages. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to create pages for all of the data tables that we created. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I add them to my menu, okay, that exists inside of my page layout so that I can reference those pages through the actual menu in the published application. So we're going to start with products, and for this, we'll choose a table component, and products is our data source. I do want the ability to add new products to this component. And yes, I do want a link to view more details about one individual product. So when I click on a detail button, it's going to take me to another page that shows me details of just one selected product. Now, it's worth noting that you can add these two links or these kind of sub pages, child pages. You can add them after the fact if you did not select them at the previous screen by clicking on the component itself. The detail link is found under the links section here on the left-hand side, and the add new record pop-up is enabled inside of options. Now, before I configure these pages, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to do this for the rest of my data tables. So suppliers, it lives in the default layout. We'll add it to our menu. I'm going to choose supplier, choose yes and yes to create that form to add new suppliers and that link to view details about an individual supplier. Again, repeated for customers. We would like the ability to add new customers and view more information about the customer. Then for inbound inventory, add it to our menu, choose the table component and our data source. And for this one, I'm only going to select the top option of a form to add new inventory records to this table. I don't really need to see details about that particular record at this time. And the same is true for outbound inventory. Again, default layout, default menu, select the table component, choose the data source, and I'm only going to select the form to add new records to that table. I don't need to see details about that record right now. Okay, now all of our pages and their subpages are now created. Now, I want to show you what we've built so far, but first I'm going to go back to these default pages. I want to go to the login page, and I need to define a specific action here within the login component. The login component can be seen here highlighted on the right side of the screen. That is a specific component that checks the email address and the password against the users in the users table, and once verified, allows that user into the application. Within that login component on the login page, we have a bunch of different options that we configure, but the one I want to focus on is login redirect rules. Now that we have our pages and our users and our roles, we have those things done. I can add a redirect rule to make sure that when somebody logs in, I redirect them to an appropriate place within the application. For now, I'm just going to choose all users, and I think I'm probably just going to send them to the products page. Now, this could look much different as your app grows or in your particular use case. If you have multiple roles, you may assign multiple rules per role and send them to different pages that's relevant to that role. But again, for now, I'm going to keep it very simple and just save this component in this page. And then I can go ahead and click preview in order to access that login and log into the application. Logging in with that user record I created earlier is going to take me to my application, and you can start to see a very basic view of what the finished product is going to look like. we have our 5 pages that we created where each page represents the data from a particular data table. We have the ability to add new information, new records into these data tables, and view all of the relevant details. So now we'll go through one by one on these components and start to make sure that we can see we're placing fields in these components that are relevant to us, stylizing a little bit, adding more function, more features, things like that. Starting with our products page, we are displaying a list of all of our products. I'm going to click on this component and I'm going to start to edit it. I don't need to display all this information. I want to just display some minimum information that's really like immediately helpful for me. So I'm going to delete some of these columns, and then I'm going to just select new columns that I want to add from the left-hand side here. So things like product name and product image, I definitely want to see those. I want to see the total that we have on hand. I want to see our reorder indicator and our stock match status. So I'm just going to move these columns around until I get them in the order that I want. And this is all the information that I want to see at the moment. I'm going to change the name of the component to just products. And then I'm going to navigate to the links section down below. I'm going to add an edit link. This is going to allow us to edit the field, or sorry, edit the record, the product record, in case we need to make changes to the product name or the product image or things like that. By clicking on the edit link column, I've opened up this configuration window where I'm going to enable show and pop-up. And I'm just going to make sure that it's formatted in the way that I want. I do want it to be a button. However, I want the button style to be solid, and that's fine for now. By adding that edit link, you're going to see it created a third subpage or child page here, which is going to automatically give us a form to edit the record in the same way that the add new pop-up created a new form to add a record. Okay, so we're going to first go into this add products form here, and I'm just going to delete everything and kind of start fresh. So I want to add some fields to this form that makes sense for when we are creating a product for the first time: a product name, a product image, and a minimum quantity for reorder. Now, these are actually all of the fields I can add because everything else is either auto-generated or calculated after a record is created. So I can simply just hit update and save, and that's it for my new product form. Similarly, for the edit product form, the only fields we can really edit are the product name, the product image, and the minimum quantity for reorder. We cannot edit calculated fields, and we cannot edit auto-generated fields. So we will simply just add those three to our form, and now that form is completed as well. Now, last thing for products is the product detail page, which should contain a large amount of information because there's a lot of things that connect to products. So we have inbound inventory that connects to products, we have outbound inventory that connects to products, and then we could see related suppliers. We could see all sorts of things because we built these connection fields and organized our data in a particular way. So to get started with designing our detail page, I want this page to be fairly user-friendly. I wanted to look nice, and I wanted to contain enough information, at least initially, so that when I look at a product, I can see, okay, how many inbound inventory records do we have and how many outbound inventory records do we have? So I'm going to use this product detail component that's already here. However, I'm going to add a new one. So first thing I'm going to do is add a new column here inside this row. And then I'm going to just resize this one so that they all kind of fit together side by side. So this column on the left is 4 out of 12 wide, and this column on the left or on the right is 8 out of 12 wide. So I'm going to add a second detail component for products, a product detail next to this existing one, and I'm going to show you why in a second. I want to make an image gallery, and I'm going to show you how to do that using Tadabase plugins. So I'm going to display my attachments field, which contains the images of my product. So either one image or multiple images, it doesn't matter. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to edit this field by clicking on it. And I'm just going to hide the title because I don't need the title of the field to show. I only want the images to show. In the detail component on the right, I'm going to display less information than what was there by default. I'm going to do the product name, the total on hand, the expected total on hand, the reorder indicator, and the stock match status. Okay, by looking at this particular record now, if we go into the details of product A, now granted, we don't have any images, so they're not going to show up here on the left. But you can see that now we have our information here about that product just stacked nicely and neatly on the right-hand side of the page. Okay, so I think it's time that we do actually make this look like a real product record. And I'm going to do that by editing the product, and we can start to define actual product information. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name, and we're going to be dealing with MacBook Pro. Okay, now for our images, we'll simply just drag some images in here to upload them. We're going to do 2 images, and we'll set our minimum quantity for reorder. Um, 10 sounds fine. So now that I have this edited, I can save it. You can see our reorder indicator is already triggering and working as expected because we have 0 on hand and our minimum quantity to reorder is 10. It's telling us, yes, you need to reorder this product. And because we don't actually have any orders for this product, our stock does indeed match. We aren't expecting any because we haven't ordered any, and we don't have any on hand. So our stock does actually match. Now, going back to this detail page, this is what I want to change now, where yes, I have images here, but I want to make them look much, much nicer. So I'm going to go back to my builder, make sure that I'm still looking at this product detail page here. And then up in the top right, I'm going to choose plugins. Over here, I have a photo gallery slider. If you don't see it, we could simply search for it here to find that particular plugin. And what this is going to do is it's going to take that attachments field that we're displaying in a detail component and turn it into a nice photo gallery. Okay, so we can simply just click install, select the detail component that we want to attach it to, which I should have shown you this first. Let's do that now. If we hover over these components, you see this has a component ID of 5. This one has a component ID of 3. This is how we identify which component is which behind the scenes. So we'll go back here and install this one more time, and we'll make sure we choose component number 5, and we'll make sure that we choose our product image attachments field. Now, as far as installing plugins, that's all we have to do. Going back to our detail page on our published application, just simply refreshing the page now, that plugin is going to kick in and it's going to give us a nice photo slider slash gallery. All right, now that I have some nice information about the product that I'm looking at, in this case, the MacBook Pro, how many I have in hand, how many do I expect to have, and then our different statuses here and our images, I then want to display our inbound and outbound inventory records because those are the most pertinent pieces of information when looking at a product. Back on our product detail page, I'm going to add a new row and I'm going to choose 2 columns because I want this to be split side by side and I want it to be equal. On the left-hand side, I'm going to choose a table component of connected inbound inventory records. So these are things, inbound inventory records that are connected using the product field. That's exactly what I want. I can then choose customize, and I can then display the information that's relevant here. So the product, the supplier, the quantity, and the status. Doing the same thing for the outbound, I'll choose a table component. Make sure that I choose the connected outbound inventory. You can see here that below here we have a number of different options that we could select. Records related to this product or just selecting a raw data table. So if I just selected this one down here, outbound inventory, we are losing, or we are not loading data here with a relationship in mind. Okay, so we're viewing the information about a particular product. Therefore, we want to select the actual records that connect directly to that product. Again, I will then choose the information that I'd like to display here. Simply update and save, and now I have connected information that's going to load on this page. All right, moving on to our suppliers page. This one will go a little bit faster. All we're simply doing here is we just want to make sure that we're displaying all the actual relevant supplier information here. So the name, contact, email, phone, address. That's good. We'll change the name of our component again. We have our detail link for our so that we can view more information about the supplier. I will add an edit link here as well and just make sure, again, the same thing. Show in pop-up. I'm going to change this to the solid color again. And that's all we really need to do other than modifying the add supplier form, right, to include the information that we actually want to input, and the edit supplier form to include the information that we actually want to edit. On the supplier detail page, what we can do here is add a column and a component in order to display all of the products that we have ordered from them. And we'll do the same thing below it for the outbound inventory that we have sent out that had this particular supplier attached to that particular record. Just so we can get an overview, if we wanted to look at data in a few different ways, right? We can check on the product detail page, hey, based on this product, based on the MacBook Pro, what's our inbound inventory look like and what does our outbound inventory look like? We could also do the same thing on the supplier details, but instead of looking at it from the product perspective, we're looking at it from the supplier perspective. So for supplier A, what products have we received from them and what products have we sent out from them? Okay, so this product detail page, this one's going to have all the same product name in both tables with different suppliers. This one is going to have the same supplier name, but different products. Okay, we can do something similar for the customers. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that one now. It's going to be set up in the exact same way as the other two pages were. So I'll kind of skip through that and then we'll come back and we'll do the inbound inventory and the outbound inventory pages. Okay, so moving on to the inbound inventory and the outbound inventory, here we are simply building these pages so that we can add records here. We don't really want to see details of them. We definitely don't want to edit them because they are inventory records. Once they're in there, they need to stay in there so that our inventory does not get screwed up. So all we really need to do here is edit what the form looks like and how it functions when we're adding inbound inventory records and when we are adding outbound inventory records. So I'll click on my add inbound inventory form here. I'll click that component to edit it. And then we will start to input or place the inputs that we need to select. So we need to select a product. We need to select a supplier. We need to select the quantity that has been ordered. We do not need to put the order status on there because we're going to set that using an automation. We do not need to put the SKU on there because that is a text formula field, meaning it actually calculates and renders after the fact, after this form has been submitted. Let's do the automation for the order status now. We can do this using form rules and selecting record rules. By clicking add new record rule, we can define that when every single time this form is submitted, we will update the record that's created and set order status to a custom value of ordered. So that's exactly what this form, what the intentions of this form are, right? When we are adding a new inbound inventory record, it's because we have placed an order. So we will update that value. Sorry, I didn't mean to close that. We will update that record and set that order status to a value of ordered. That way we don't have to do it manually. We don't have to rely on people to actually make sure we click that. We will do it automatically and therefore increase our data integrity. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stylize this form a little bit by modifying the actual form inputs that we have created. So we have our three fields here: product connection, supplier connection, and the quantity ordered field. I'm going to make our connections a little bit nicer to work with. Right now, this is going to simply serve as one big giant dropdown that's just going to display all of the products by their name. What I want to do instead is I want to change this to a table view dropdown because I want to display more information about the product, such as the product name and the product image and the total on hand. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Actually, one more thing. How about the reorder indicator? We'll put all four of these pieces of information from the product table inside the actual product connection dropdown. For supplier, we're going to modify it in the same way. We're going to choose the table view, and I want to show the supplier name, and let's do like the supplier email and the supplier phone number. Okay, after doing that, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go just through all of the inputs on here, and I'm going to make sure that the fields themselves or the inputs are actually required so that we are not inputting blank records. So every single thing has to be selected here or filled in order to submit the form. And after that, our form is done. Before moving on to the outbound inventory, we're going to make a couple changes here to the actual table component that displays all of these records. First, I'm just going to delete some of the columns that I really don't care to see at the moment. I'm going to rename our component, reorder some things, and then I'm going to make that action button, which is going to update our order status. We are then also going to add a connected page link to view information about the connected product. And lastly, we are going to add some filter tabs so that we can give our users of the published application some quick access to different types of filters. Okay, the first one we're going to do is under Actions. So we'll click on Actions, and we want to choose Update this record. This is going to create a button that's going to perform a function. And the function that we want it to do is we want it to update the order status to delivered. So the intention of this button is for users to go in and mark when something has been delivered in order to kick off all the proper equations and calculations to get our total stock on hand values where they need to be. So we will update this record when clicking on the button, update the order status to a custom value of delivered. Next, I'll simply just rename some values here, mark as delivered. I'll give it a fancy icon so that people know that it's actually doing something here. Okay, and then we'll simply change this from a link to a button. And we can change the color to something like info, just something different from the other buttons that we already have defined throughout our application. The next thing we're going to do is into the links menu here, where we did not add a record detail page to view information about the inbound inventory records that we are displaying here. Rather, I want to choose a connected page because I want to display information about the product that we are showing here. So for this, I'll choose any connected page that I have access to. Since we have built out our connections in this specific way, we will have access to our product detail page. I can then select that, add it as a column, show it as a pop-up, and format it as a button. And then the last thing we're going to do is add some filter tabs. By clicking on the filters tab at the top of this menu, we can then enable the filter tabs feature and start to create the actual filters that we want our users to work with. The first one will just be called ordered, and we'll set a color here. And this will filter all the records where the order status is ordered. We'll add a second tab here called delivered. We'll set this to green. This will only show records where the order status is delivered. And that gives our users the ability to toggle through those two different types of views based on the information and the filters that they want to see. Last but not least is our outbound inventory table. This is the one that has all of those connections to the inbound inventory record, the product, the supplier, the customer, and the outbound quantity. So just like the other ones, we're just going to rename this. And again, you can rename these components to whatever you want, but for me, I'll just rename them something simple. I'm going to add a connected page link just like I did before because I always want to be able to view more information about the product that we're referencing here. We'll show it in a pop-up just like we did on the last page, change it to a link or a button instead of a link, and that's pretty much good to go. Now, when we are allowing our users to add outbound inventory, so whatever that looks like, if it's through an order or a customer order, whether it's like an external transfer, product went bad or was damaged or ruined, whatever it was, and you need to deduct it from your inventory, we need to make sure that that form is doing all of the functionality that we need it to do. Now, based on what we've kind of already discussed with how that connection system works between the outbound inventory and the inbound inventory, where we actually want to select a specific inbound inventory record instead of selecting a product, what we're going to do here on this form is we're going to add that inbound inventory connection. We are not going to add the product or the supplier. We will simply just do this one, the customer, and the quantity. Now, the inbound inventory 100% will be required. This must be selected so that we know how to deduct the quantities from the products that we physically have in order for our product calculations to work properly. Similarly to how we set up the connection fields in the inbound inventory, I'm going to change this from a regular style dropdown to a table because I do want to see more information about this particular product. If I were to only display the product name, I'm going to see a bunch of records that have the same product name. I have no way to differentiate between which is which. So we're going to put things like the SKU, the product name, where did it go? Product, supplier, and that's probably okay for now. Just those three will work. The customer, just to make it look nice, we can do the same thing. We'll do a table view and we'll do the customer name, email, phone, and address. We'll do all four of those fields. Now, it's worth mentioning that I did not make the customer field required because there are ways or that you might have outbound inventory that is not going to a particular customer. And that's something that we'll deal with in another video when we start to expand this application and make it a little bit more robust. So we will require the outbound quantity because we always need to know how many products went out. Okay. Now, before we update and save, we need to do a little bit more automating here because we did not set the product or the supplier, right? Based on that graphic that we showed earlier in the video, we are going to get that information from the inbound inventory record that we select. So we're going to go to rules and record rules, add a new one, and say every time this form is submitted, we're going to update the record and we're going to set the product and we're going to set the supplier to a connected value of the inbound inventory, the selected inbound inventory's product, and a connected value of the selected inbound inventory's supplier. This is going to go and grab that value from our connected inbound inventory record and set it here so that it's always going to be the same. All right, now I know that was a lot to take in without actually kind of referencing what that's all going to look like. But now we're going to come full circle and we're going to take a look at that finished product now where we can view all of the things that we just set up with all of the parent level pages of product suppliers, customers, inbound and outbound inventory, all of the relevant detail pages, all of the add new record forms and edit record forms. When we kind of break this down into what we actually built, those are really the four things that we worked with: creating new pages, adding detail pages, adding new record forms, and edit record forms. We did do some additional stuff with automation using form record rules, but we still worked within the confines of the form component itself. Some of the other things that we did, like the plugins, is totally unnecessary, I suppose. So I wanted to show it off here inside this application, but you by all means do not have to use a plugin to turn something into a photo gallery. Okay, so let's go into our products page now, and we're going to start to actually use this application the way that it's intended to be used. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new product. We, keeping with the theme of our existing product, we are going to be selling or working with iPhones as well. So we'll do iPhone 15 Pro. I'm going to drag in some images here. And our minimum quantity for reorder, let's say 15. Okay, now we have two products. We have the iPhone 15 Pro with our images, our MacBook Pro with our images, and we still don't have any total on hand, but that's fine. We're going to go through and we're going to do that. I have also inputted some suppliers that we can work with and some customers that we can work with. Navigating to our inbound inventory table here, what we're going to do is we are going to then add a new record. We will select our product, and you can see by modifying the way those connection fields look, we can now see way more information per record that's showing here so that we can get a really good look at the products that we want to select. So the first one we have, let's say we are ordering MacBook Pros from how about TechMe, okay? And we've ordered 50. I can save that. You can see that our order status is currently marked as ordered, even though we did not select that. That is what ran in our form record rule as an automation. And if we go back to our products here, you can see that our stock mismatch is showing. And you know what? I think it might be wise to actually go put that expected total on hand right next door to total on hand so that we can see that value and why it's showing stock mismatch. So it's showing we do need to reorder it because we don't have any on hand yet. And stock mismatch, right? Because 0 is not equal to 50. Going into the detail, whoops, Going into the details of this product, you can see we now are showing this connected record of the inbound inventory orders and stuff that have taken place for this particular product. Going back to our inbound inventory page, when this product actually arrived, we can choose delivered or choose the button mark as delivered, and that's going to automatically run that action and update this to delivered. Now, before I leave this page, I just want to point out the filter tabs that we created that are currently not active. But if I click on any one of them, it's going to filter that table. So ordered, we have nothing to show here because everything we have ordered has been delivered. If I click on delivered, then everything is showing here that has currently been delivered or filtered by the status. Going back to our products page once again, you'll see that now total on hand is calculating as 50. Because we ordered 50, we have received 50. Our expected total is 50. That's good. They match, and we do not need to reorder these because we have enough. Okay, so let's do the same thing for iPhones. Actually, yeah, iPhones. No, we're going to do one more MacBook. Let's do one more MacBook. This time we're going to order another 50 from Digital Pros. So we'll do another 50 here. We've ordered them from two different suppliers. Okay, and great. They same day delivery. We have updated that as delivered. Okay, again, products. This is now updated to 100. Expected total is 100. Everything's good to go. And then on our detail, we have that additional record that shows here. Let's do the same thing for iPhone, and then we'll move on to the outbound inventory table. So this one will do phones for you, and we've ordered, let's say, 100. Okay, and again, mark as delivered. Because I really just want to show you what this looks like once everything is delivered and we have physical product and we are moving physical product out. Okay, now within our outbound inventory table, let's say that we need to start creating some records here to kind of showcase how the calculations are now going to change when product actually leaves. So this is a really, really hopefully a clear image as to why we created the connections in the way that we did. So we have our inbound inventory records here. And we're displaying all of them. And by displaying this additional information, you can see that if we were only showing the product name, we wouldn't know which one was which. We wouldn't know which kind of physical inventory we were actually trying to pull from. So by doing it this way, we know that, oh, we are actually going to sell the TechMe ones first. Okay. And we can select a customer if we wish. And this customer is going to have 10. So this is going to pull from those 50, I think it was 50, from TechMe that we inputted just a few moments ago. Going back to our products, you can see that now our total on hand has dropped down to 90. Going into the details, we could see that we have this outbound inventory record here showing that we pulled 10 from TechMe, this record right here. So we pulled it from here. Now this quantity is not going to change on the inbound inventory record. This needs to stay as a historical value so that you can always go back and see how many did I order from that particular supplier. Um, the other thing that's worth mentioning here that we did not talk about yet was that the product and the supplier are being set through an automation. Okay, so remember on this form for outbound automation, we are only selecting the inbound inventory record. And then using the form record rules, we are grabbing the connected product and the connected supplier and saving it to these two fields. So we did not have to set these. These are done automatically by Tadabase through form record rules. And then again, we can click on these the product detail connected pop-ups so that we can see all that information from our product detail page. So you don't have to constantly bounce back and forth between the product details and the inbound or the two inventory pages where you are managing your inventory. Okay, so let's add another one here. Let's do, well, we'll do two more. We'll pull from this particular product too. And let's say this one's going to somewhere else. And this is going to be 25. And we will also pull some iPhones from our inventory. And all of our values are updating in real time so that you can get a really good view of when things need to be reordered, whether or not you have a stock match issue, and just a general oversight of how your products are doing, what's coming in and what's going out. And that really is just the basis of an inventory management application. We need to be able to see at any given moment how many products we have, and we need to see what's coming in and what has gone out. Now, from here, we're going to be adding quite a bit more out of this application. But like I said, that's going to come in the form of multiple videos or multiple parts. So for today's blueprint on inventory management, we can call this one done. By following along with this video and following all the steps, you should at this point be able to get a basic inventory management system into production and have a pretty decent understanding of not only how to build it, but why we needed to build it in that way. So with all that said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.